44 years ago, and she's still appearing to us, and I'm saying us, thinking of each one of you, because even if this is your first visit to Medjugorje, it can be life-changing. Even if it is your 100th visit, it can be life-changing. And what you will learn here in Medjugorje is completely different than any other place. All of the other places in the world where Our Lady has been appearing are beautiful places with beautiful spirituality, but you don't get that living grace that is present here. And that's what God is keeping for a certain period of time, and it will not last forever. So it's very good that we are still having this beautiful time of grace, because regardless of how life is difficult nowadays, it's still time for grace. And don't forget that. So I work here as a guide, and when Brenda contacted me, I told her that I had a group from tomorrow, and I was supposed to balance between two groups. But then in the end of August, I had accident, and I had fracture of my bone here and a small brain hemorrhage because I fell on my head. And it became stressful in the last few weeks, so it started to be blue again. And I'm supposed to have another CT taken in the end of next week, just to be careful to monitor that. So I said, I will help Brenda, I will tell her when we have certain testimonies or everything, but I won't be able to do it full time. But today we have the whole day for ourselves. We can hear the story, we can receive the message, we can be together, you can even ask questions. And as in one of these evenings, we will organize, Brenda, that I come to the hotel and give you more talks about, like different things, and especially about if you have any questions.
Yes.
I'm just instrument. Don't think of me that I'm any better, any different than any one of you. We're all people, God's children, that God is choosing to maybe do some ministry in the future. And it starts with ourselves. Please take a seat. There are plenty of room here for you to take a seat if you want. And room also over here. Anyway, the story of Medjugorje starts not just 44 years ago when the operation started, but I would dare to say that God was preparing the story of Medjugorje for decades before. The parish of St. James was instituted in 1892. Those of you who were walking with me, I showed you the old church ground. And it's a very special ground where the old church was built and named after St. James, which is the first son. There's only one church of St. James in the whole country, and it was that church. St. James happens to be the patron saint of pilgrims, so he became, like here from the beginning. Communists destroyed that church in 1978, which is also connected to the apparitions of the Blessed Mother. So today it will seem to you that I will jump in from this, from there, but by the time we finish and at the end of the week, everything will set in its own place. We as a nationality have suffered greatly. We've been persecuted for nearly 5 centuries under Turks. 500 years ago, this used to be 100% Catholic country where only Catholics lived. Now, in this country, you have 5% of Catholics. Can you imagine the drop down from 100% to 5%? And it's not by accidents. It is all part of this big persecution. And the fact that, as Our Lady said, Satan has been really angry at our country, at our nation. Why? Because all these people who were able to preserve the faith, people who preserved the faith after centuries under Turks, you could call them our predecessors. I think of them as extremely brave, as extremely strong in their faith, because for them to stay Catholic despite that persecution was so huge. For me to be Catholic nowadays is not difficult at all. Nobody is asking me anything. I'm able to go to the church, I'm able to say my prayers, I'm able to download anything that I can from internet. Back in those days, you couldn't do any of that. They were able to keep the faith even when, at a time when they didn't have priests. There were no priests here for centuries. Priests were crucified by Turks when they first came here, they crucified and killed all of them. So people preserved the faith from generation to generation by baptizing the children themselves. And only centuries afterwards, the first priests arrived, and they were here traveling secretly, not even able to declare themselves as priests. Then we had World War I, World War II. After World War II, the whole world is starting to recover and to become normal. But here we had communism regime that was born in the end of the World War II. Tito, who used to be our lifelong president, was at the same time the biggest dictator. The whole world, when you say Tito, they think, oh, he was a nice person, he wore white suits, his friends were Elizabeth Taylor. He actually committed the genocide that nobody spoke about at the end of the World War II, where nearly 300, I would dare to say, even 500,000 people were killed. Whose bodies are still missing. And they were killed all around the country. Communists killed 860 priests in the country, and only in this little diocese around Medjugorje, 67 Franciscan priests. That didn't happen in Poland, it didn't happen in the Czech Republic, that were much bigger. My grandfather, that many priests were not killed there, but they were killed here. And the reason is definitely that Satan for centuries was trying to destroy the plan that God had, not just with our nation, but with the whole world. In the communism regime, the number of the Catholics dropped down to 17%, and now after the recent war, because we had war from 1991 up to 1996, and new migrations, when many people are immigrating, unfortunately, and going to the other countries because of the economy, the number of the Catholics is only about 5%, and it's getting less and less. We live in a country that's dominantly Muslim country, and I always say that if it wasn't for the apparitions of the Blessed Mother, if it wasn't for her messages, if it wasn't for the great hope and the great consolation that we receive in these messages and in these apparitions, I would be terrified to live here. It wouldn't be safe, it wouldn't be normal, it wouldn't be good. Even now it's difficult for people who are living in the northern parts surrounded with Muslims only. It's not easy for them. So Our Lady came 44 years ago, a year after Tito died, and I always say that it wasn't by accident, because if he was alive, I'm sure that he would have ordered kids to be killed. Like that. They would have been killed. But the regime was getting a little bit less severe with his death, and Our Lady chooses 1 year after he died to appear to children in unknown village that nobody had heard about. 15 minutes away from Medjugorje, nobody knew about Medjugorje. However, God was preparing this parish even before.